The air right now in 2026 feels incredibly heavy, doesn't it? If you're a young man today, you already know exactly what I'm talking about. You literally feel it before your eyes even fully open in the morning. It's this suffocating, invisible weight pressing down right on your chest. You look around and you just see potential quietly being buried everywhere. But what if I told you this weight? It isn't random. What if this immense pressure is actually a highly calculated mechanism? Because understanding what is happening right now, in this exact moment, is a matter of absolute survival. Think about your daily reality. Your phone lights up and notifications stack up like quiet accusations. The numbers on your screens absolutely refuse to match the grueling hours you actually worked. Apartments cost way more than the paychecks that were supposed to buy your freedom. And your friendships, they thin out. They thin out because everyone is desperately calculating their own survival in total privacy. Silence just settles into rooms that once held massive, ambitious plans. But listen to me carefully here. This is not just ordinary trouble. And more importantly, this isolation you're feeling, it is not your personal failure. What you are experiencing is the early, deliberate tightening of a massive, completely unfeeling machine. So you have to ask yourself, what is this machine actually doing? What is the true purpose of this immense, invisible threat that is just operating in the background of your daily life? And honestly, the more terrifying question is, what exactly does it do with those who stay soft? You need to demand an answer to that question right now, because the truth is going to permanently change how you view your own struggle. Here is the reality. The machine is a filter. It's a brutal, historical law that's been running for centuries. It uses intense, crushing adversity to sort, to test, and to reveal exactly who is going to fold and who is going to harden. That constant uncertainty you feel every single day, that uncertainty is the point. The tension is the teacher. What looks like pure chaos to the untrained eye is actually a highly calculated sorting mechanism. It is relentlessly testing whether you are going to shrink or if you're going to expand under the load. Now, this filter is not some new phenomenon we just invented. You want unassailable historical proof? Look at the past. Thomas Edison watched invention after invention completely collapse, but he didn't quit. He turned repeated, agonizing failure into data that literally no one else wanted to collect. Nikola Tesla watched his brilliant ideas get taken, stolen, and twisted, yet he kept pushing current into the dark while the entire world called him unstable. Jeff Bezos, he carried years of bleeding red numbers and massive financial losses while the loudest voices around him called his vision totally foolish. They didn't shrink. The machine tested them, and they hardened. Let's focus on a much more recent example. Curtis Jackson felt the exact same tightening of this machine in Southside Queens right when the crack epidemic was eating entire city blocks. His mother was murdered when he was just 8 years old. The world did not slow down to notice a boy left all alone. It didn't care. But he used the exact same streets that tried to erase him to learn intense focus and speed. By 20, he left those drug corners with literally nothing but mixtapes and a sheer refusal to stay small. He was shot 9 times, 9 bullets, and he still walked right back into the studio. You see, one path asks for pity from a world that simply doesn't care. The other path is taken by a man who decided that bullets were not going to write his ending. When Eminem and Dr. Dre signed Curtis Jackson, they didn't hand him a career because the music industry felt generous that day. They didn't care about a sad story. They heard a man who had already survived the filter. They heard a guy who had let that brutal early stage do its quiet, hardening work. This exact pattern repeats across every single generation that faces real weight. Jesus spoke these exact words. A kernel of wheat must fall into the ground and die before it can produce many seeds. He named the process without using any soft language. The death of the seed is the absolute, non-negotiable prerequisite for power. The seed dies or it stays completely alone. The early struggle you are in, it's never the end. It is the absolute beginning of your leverage. Section 2. The cost of staying soft, also known as the 2026 furnace. Let's smash right into your modern reality. The early struggle you are facing right now is not an obstacle preventing your life. It is the furnace forging it. We need to completely deconstruct the exact psychological pressures destroying young men today. Think about it. You face algorithms that literally never sleep. You have debt that compounds while you sleep. Expectations that stay totally silent until they suddenly crush you. You look up and you find the old corporate ladders are just missing rungs. Your attention is being sold in pieces so microscopic that focus itself has become a rare, elite skill. Your body sits completely still, just staring at a screen, while your mind races through terrifying worst-case scenarios that feel more real than any actual plan. Because of this heat, there is a fatal flaw, and there is a necessary adaptation. The fatal flaw is misreading the environment. It's believing that the suffering is your own personal failure and just waiting around for conditions to improve. Let me tell you, waiting for a fair world is a trap, because that world is never, ever coming. The necessary adaptation? That means treating the pain as your very first real teacher. The men who actually last understand that this brutal heat is the only place where the real metal forms. Let's analyze this fatal misreading of the environment. The vast majority of young men out there just consume endless content about struggle rather than taking any real action. They misread the silence of the world as proof that effort is totally useless, so they wait for a rescue that isn't on the way. But look at that tiny razor-thin fraction. That fraction is actually producing results in silence. They understand that sitting around watching another man's victory on a screen does absolutely nothing to build your own leverage. So we come back to that terrifying question: what does the machine do with the soft? Here is the brutal truth that closes the loop. Young men who refuse to do the early work, they stay soft. And soft does not survive the later stages. Soft becomes the raw material that the machine uses without even asking. It literally consumes them to fuel the very systems they thought would save them. The environment is not going to become kinder. Section 3. The mechanics of quiet power and the forging process. So, if the machine is already running and it's already using the software, how do you actually survive it? Here are the exact internal and practical shifts required. Step 1. You absolutely must stop waiting for permission from a world that was never ever going to give it to you. You have to start treating every single closed door as critical information rather than a personal rejection. You must move before the feeling of readiness even arrives, because the years are not going to wait for you to feel ready. Step 2 is building what we call blind systems. And step 3 is the irreversible social shift. You become undeniable because your results simply refuse to stay hidden. Let's break down these blind systems, because they do not depend on your mood and they certainly don't depend on your motivation. You need a fixed sleep schedule to fiercely protect your mind. You need a skill that is practiced daily, even when absolutely nobody is watching and there is zero visible reward. Your money must be tracked relentlessly with the exact same life-or-death seriousness that Curtis Jackson once tracked product out on the street. And your body? It must be trained to completely reject weakness, because physical weakness actively invites more pressure from the machine. It's time to completely reframe your lonely reality right now. This isolation you feel, it is not proof of weakness. It is the clearing where the next version of the man is assembled. The behaviors that look purely emotional or isolated from the outside are actually entirely strategic. The young man who is studying while everyone else is mindlessly scrolling, he's not escaping reality. He is building leverage that compounds in absolute silence. This quiet, ruthless decision to train the body, control the money, and protect the mind, that is the modern version of leaving the corner for the studio. Section 4. The final 3 paths and the cost of misreading. I need you to listen to this final psychological warning. The cost of misreading this moment is permanent. Time does not refund the years you spend blaming the system or blaming bad luck. Habits formed under this kind of pressure are permanent. The mind that learns to fold under discomfort is going to stay folded long after that discomfort is gone. From this exact point, 3 paths open up. Path 1 is the old cycle. You consume content, you wait for rescue, and you remain totally dependent on systems that never promised you loyalty. Path 2 is quiet competence. Your skills compound, your health stabilizes, and your money moves under your own direction. You become much harder to replace. But path 3 is the dangerous path. You treat this entire brutal environment as pure training data. You build something that outlasts the noise entirely, making you the one that others eventually have to study. And this leads us to a chilling realization that absolutely does not soften with time. The pressure you feel? It was never the enemy. The pressure was the filter. History has never ever apologized for the men it leaves behind. The men who later carried massive names like Edison, Tesla, Bezos, and Jackson. They walked straight through the heat, while others stopped and tried to call their stopping wisdom. The environment will not become kinder. It is only going to become clearer about who adapted and who did not. The machine is already running. The sorting is already well underway. So which of these paths are most young men already walking without even noticing the direction? Look closely at your own trajectory right now. This struggle is either going to be the place where your strength is forged in total silence, or the place where your potential is quietly buried. The choice isn't waiting for you in the future. It's already forming right now, under the surface of your daily actions.